I was born in New Orleans. I have two younger sisters. My dad was a practicing attorney for many years, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. Went to Holy Name of Jesus Grammar School, taught by the Sisters of Mercy, known in my family, since my sisters went there too, as the Sisters of Little or No Mercy. I went to Jesuit High, and for college, I went to the University of Notre Dame. My dad thought it would be a very good idea if I got some, really good work experience. So he's while I was in high school. So he sent me for an interview to work on the waterfront. And I show up in the hiring hall, and I am what, at this point, maybe 5'7", 5'8", 135 pounds. I'm next to these huge guys all signing up for day labor, and whoever was in charge was very nice. He took my name and address and said, "Thank you very much, we'll call you." And I shot out of there and told my dad that was not a very good idea. So but the next step was to work in a warehouse, a drugstore supply company. They, all that stuff you see in drugstores other than drugs. Well, this was a company that supplied that. And one of my favorite stories was I was helping unload a truck, and the driver, big guy, said, "You stand at the end of the truck and I'll toss these boxes to you." So he picks up a box with one hand and tosses it to me, hits me in the chest, knocks me flat on the ground, and knocks the wind out of me. It was a box of D batteries. And I mean, he just picked it up, and I thought I was getting, toilet paper or something. And so anyway, I don't know whether my dad was worried about whether I would go on to college or not, but I assured him I was all for the academic approach. Since my dad was a lawyer, and as I got older, I worked with him, doing research for him in the law firm and stuff like that. We just all assumed. My dad didn't pressure me. You could be anything you wanted to do, any path you wanted to follow was fine. But we just assumed I would go to law school and practice with him. So I went to LSU. I think the biggest, the strongest influence on me was the teacher of torts, Professor Wex Malone. The best thing about him was that he loved teaching and he loved his subject, and you just caught his affection for it, and you just said, this must be good stuff. This must be good stuff, and he just sort of drew you into it because he was so excited about it. You said, well, I want that excitement, and he was just a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And when I joined the faculty years later, he was my mentor. I got a call from Loyola. They wanted to hire somebody to teach Louisiana law courses. And they had been to the law school convention and were riding back on the train with some of my teachers. And they mentioned my name to folks at Loyola. And so Loyola called me for an interview. And I was very flattered. They offered me a job. I was so frustrated that I wasn't getting through that I jumped up, and it was as though my body language and everything, I started writing on the board, but my body language and everything else communicated that my determination that I am going to get through to you. You don't want to learn this, and you got your little minds closed to this, but by God, I'm going to get through to you. And I just started directing all this energy at him, and writing on the board. And for the rest of my teaching career, I've never sat down. I mean, I paced back and forth, gesticulating, and I mean, just almost like a wild man up there, because it was me against ignorance and indifference. You are not going to leave this classroom dumb. You are just not going to leave this classroom, and you're not going to be indifferent to what I want to teach you. I really, really like teaching. I really, really like teaching. And that feeling of how excited I get teaching, it stayed with me from that class all the way through to the last class. I mean, I had as much fun teaching the class in my last class as I did my first class. And I also found out that I could be more determined to get the material through than they were determined not to listen. I was at Loyola for 3 years, and during that time, during the summers, I worked with my dad, and I also, part of the Great Society was the creation of the New Orleans Legal Assistance Corporation to give people who couldn't afford a lawyer legal representation, and I did work with them. Well, I moved to LSU because Dean Hebert called me and invited me to teach. This was at the end of my third year. And the call came on a Saturday morning, about 6:30 in the morning. And I took the call, and Dean Hebert said, Howard, we'd like you to come teach with us. And so I said, sure, and went back to sleep. And then I didn't hear anything. And so I said, maybe I dreamed that. Because I needless to say, I was not fully awake at 6:30 on Saturday morning. So anyway, but it turned out he was serious about it. And the teacher that I had for Louisiana civil procedure, Henry George McMahon, had died I graduated in May of '66, and he died in the fall of '66 when he was on sabbatical. And so they were looking for somebody to take his course on Louisiana civil procedure, and they asked Judge Tate, Al Tate, on the Louisiana Court of Appeals, to teach the course, and he did for 2 years, but he wanted to go back to the bench, and so they were looking for somebody, and so they asked me would I be interested in doing it, and I said yes, and so I started in the fall of '69 and ended in the spring of 2011. First, I did a lot of work with the Louisiana Law Institute as a reporter for the revision of the Code of Civil Procedure. I did that for years. And then in the mid-'80s, I became a part-time U.S. magistrate. I was teaching federal civil procedure and a federal courts course, and I thought being a magistrate would give me some experience. And I had no sooner started as the part-time magistrate than the full-time magistrate resigned. And while they were searching for a new magistrate, I was the only magistrate in the Middle District, which got to be very busy. And because I was the one that law enforcement would go to when they wanted a search warrant. And I found out that this was a 24-hour a day possibility. So I had to carry my seal with me and bring it home and have conferences around the dining room table at 3 o'clock in the morning, going over affidavits for a search warrant and stuff, and had a most memorable experience, because part of what I did as a magistrate was hold 5A hearings. When they arrest somebody, they bring them in before the magistrate, who explains what they're charged with, asks them if they need to have an attorney appointed, and advise them of their rights. Our chancellor had to resign for personal reasons, and I got a call right before I was to go into my class from the president of the university, who said that you're going to be the interim chancellor. And we had a vice chancellor, but our vice chancellor was on the short list to become dean of the SMU Law School, so he was not considered. And since I had had administrative experience before, they said, well, we'll just put Lawfont in there. And he said, and the president said, I said, well, I need to talk to my family about this. And he said, well, you can go ahead and do that, but I'm going to hold a press conference in 30 minutes and announce that you're going to be the chancellor. I got to be friends with the chaplain at the Episcopal Student Center, which is right across the parking lot from the law center. And I would go talk to Chuck because he had gotten a degree in counseling from LSU, as well as being the chaplain. And so I would talk to him about just approaches and just what did he think about this, what did he think about that. And he was a great help to me, a great mentor. And I got to be, in getting to know him, my conversations with him also involved learning about the Episcopal Church. And what I learned about the Episcopal Church convinced me that that was the place for me to be. And so I became a member of the Episcopal Church. And this is important because of what else happened in my life. I heard through the grapevine that a former classmate, he was a year ahead of me, but he was on law review when I was on law review, and had been a practicing lawyer in New Orleans. I heard through the grapevine that he had become an Episcopal priest. And when I heard that, my reaction was, that's what I want to do. The problem for me is that I did not want to give up teaching because I really, really enjoy teaching. But what finally pushed me was in the scripture, the story of Jesus meeting the rich young man. And Jesus said, come follow me and sell what you have. And he turns away because he didn't want to do that. And I was thinking, at the end of my life, if I stand before Jesus and he says to me, I called you, but you didn't come. I said, no, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. So I said, all right. So I will become an Episcopal priest. After I was ordained, I served at a church in Bogalusa, and then, because what the bishop wanted was for self-supporting priests to serve a parish until the parish was built up enough so that they could hire a priest, a full-time priest. And so I did that in Bogalusa, and then became an assistant to the chaplain at the LSU Episcopal Center. And that was easy because I could walk out of, as I jokingly say, walk out of the law school in my lawsuit and do Shazam in the parking lot and go into the Episcopal Student Center in my clericals. And so, no, it worked out. It worked out fine. I had a heart attack in the summer of '09, which was, needless to say, sobering. And so I thought, well, okay, I think it's time. And so that was in summer of '09. I was out the fall semester, came back and taught spring 10, fall 10, and retired in spring of 11. I would like my students to remember me as a teacher who cared very, very much about them and wanted to help them learn as much as possible. And for students who came to talk to me, I would like them to think of me as someone that they could, a man that they could talk to when they felt like life was getting too much for them, that I would be someone who would care about them, would listen to them, and would give them the sense that whatever is going on in their life, that I am with them with it. I am there for them and will be there for them.